From personal experience, I've learned the rule that it's not worth building any relationships where you live. After all, you can fall in love with a person very much, and then be disappointed in him. And after that, you will have to meet him anyway, willy-nilly, and these intersections will not bring joy. I was looking forward to the developer finishing and renting the apartment to me. It is always nice to buy an expensive thing, and when it comes to housing, the situation is doubly joyful. When this event happened, I quickly drew up a project and hired a construction team, which made repairs as soon as possible. The finishing of the neighboring apartment took place at the same rapid pace. It was like my one-night stand. We moved in the same day with a neighbor named Dena. I wanted to have a traditional fun, but my friends refused this event, citing urgent business. I firmly believe in the omen that it is necessary to open a bottle of champagne in a new apartment, and then I remembered Dean. He rang her doorbell. "I'm sorry to bother you. It would be right if such a joyful event as moving into a new apartment was accompanied by a couple of glasses of champagne. That's why I invite you, Denachka, to my place. I have prepared for this event." She agreed without even thinking about it. "Of course, Vadim, I'll look in on you in half an hour." Despite the mess in the apartment, the evening continued. We had dinner, had a few drinks and chatted. I found out that my new friend is 7 years younger than me. She will turn 30 this year. She was married and recently divorced. The reason for the breakup with her husband was his infidelity. I also shared my story with Dena, told her about my marriage that ended. In our case, with my ex-wife, feelings for each other dried up, so we just decided to break up. By the way, my neighbor found many common interests. We turned out to be theatergoers, we both love to travel, and we also do sports. Well, not professionally, of course, just for myself. So we decided to go to the gym together. In short, they took a mutual liking to each other. To be honest, deep down I hoped that this sympathy would grow into something more, so I began to show signs of attention to the woman I liked. We spent every evening together. She didn't resist the inevitable. The close relationship did not take long to wait, and now every morning I woke up in the same bed with my neighbor. And 2 months later they decided to move into my apartment and rent the next one. The lodger was found quickly. It turned out to be a young athletic-looking man named Anton. He was a quiet tenant, didn't take in any friends or women. Dena and I hardly saw each other. It seems that Anton needed the apartment solely for overnight accommodation. Dena worked as a sales manager at a furniture store. And, despite not having a very large salary, I somehow managed to save up for an apartment and not get into a mortgage. However, she was not distinguished by any thrift. She parted with money without regrets. I was wondering, well, how did she manage to raise funds for housing? My roommate once answered this question. It's simple, when a person has a goal, he mobilizes, and now that housing has been bought, why save money? They need to be spent. Life with Dena was generally fine with me. A beautiful, interesting, young girl, well, let's say with a few feminine quirks, but who does not have them? But one Sunday morning turned everything around. We had a day off, we were sleeping peacefully in our bed, but what else can people do at 6 in the morning? We were woken up by a heart-rending scream that stood on the landing in the entrance. All the neighbors jumped out at this scream. The noise came from a middle-aged lady who was breaking into Anton's room. She was beside herself and had no control over her behavior. "Where is this Prashmandovka? Let's call her, I'll scratch out her eyes." On the threshold of the apartment stood a terrified Anton in wide Mexican-style underpants. The neighbors were outraged and threatened to call the police, but the lady did not let up. "We have a family, children, and she shamelessly destroys it." Dena also came out to the noise. She probably would have preferred to stay in bed if she had known what was going on. The woman, seeing my beloved, rushed to her in a rage. A moment later, a wisp of long hair was left in her hand. I rushed to separate the two representatives of the fair sex, and after a few minutes Anastasia, that was the name of the uninvited guest, came to her senses and told me about the reason for her sudden appearance. I woke up early in the morning and remembered that today I would need cash to pay off. And I didn't have any. I reached into my husband's bag and found the documents for the purchase of an apartment there. I was very surprised, although he earns well, but he was simply obliged to report such an acquisition. Doubts crept in, so I took his phone. And so I found a correspondence with this bastard, not a lover. He bought her an apartment. A few hours later, Anton had to vacate his apartment, and Dena returned to her native penates. That was the end of our relationship, and my beloved did not even try to explain anything. But, as it turned out, the neighbors' troubles were only gaining momentum. Her lover issued an apartment for her. Dena lied to me that she divorced her husband. The former spouse sued for divorce and division of property, thereby claiming his rights to housing in a neighbor's apartment. The process of division was delayed, and now I run into my ex-girlfriend in the hallway every day. The lover eventually, of course, chose a family and broke off relations with Dena, who had to sell the apartment and move to another housing.